it was around 10 months that I felt like, yeah, there's 100, I was 100% sure then at 10 months old that there was definitely something, there was definitely more to this. And I wasn't going to let it was that moment where I knew I'm not going to let this, I'm not going to walk out an appointment now and let them tell me that everything's okay, because I know that it's not. She was seen in that clinic, and the pediatrician, she agreed there was signs of autism there. However, she categorically said to me, she's too young. We can't diagnose her. She's too young at this point, because she was about 18 months old at the time, I think, when she had that appointment, and they wanted to give her more time. So I was like, that's fair enough. So Hallie's actually probably done a whole 360 on food, really. I think the sensory side of things we found out was actually to do with the chewing. So she wasn't able to chew very well, which meant she was choking a lot. She doesn't know how much food to put in her mouth, and she often bites her lips and things like that because she's not feeling things the same as other people. When I was growing up, my mum had MS. I knew instantly that I wanted to be in a job that was helping other people, because that's all I've ever done, is help people.
Hello and welcome to the Stories About Autism podcast. My name is James and I'm your host, and I'm a dad of two boys, Tommy and Jude, who are both autistic. Each week on the podcast, I get to speak to a special guest who shares their own story about autism. I speak with autistic adults, parents of children who are autistic, and professionals who work with the autism community too. There will also be some episodes where I talk a little bit more about me and my boys, share our own experiences, and answer some of your questions. So make sure to look out for those. This week, I'm joined by Nicola, a mum of three girls, the youngest of who, Hallie, is autistic. Nicola has been sharing insights into Hallie and her family's lives for a little over 18 months on Instagram and TikTok on her page Hands With Hallie. And thanks to some beautiful, informative, viral videos, already has over 120,000 followers, which is exactly how I came to follow them too. I was really excited to talk to Nicola for a number of reasons. Firstly, I knew she'd be able to provide some great insight into how autism is viewed differently by many when it comes to boys and girls. And with Hallie still so young and only recently diagnosed, she's really well placed to talk about the diagnosis experience, both practically and emotionally. We talk about some of the early signs that made her push for a diagnosis and some of the sensory challenges Hallie has, what sleep is like in their house, and Hallie's relationship with her sisters. We also talk about the EHCP process that they're currently in the middle of, and they're waiting to find out what school provision will be made available for Hallie. Having met Nicola earlier this year and been captivated by the videos she shares, it was great to get to know more about her and her family's story. I think this will be a really interesting episode for anyone at the early stages of their autism journey and anyone who wants to know more about autism and girls. Let's get into it. Here's my chat with Nicola. I really hope you enjoy it. Okay, Nicola, hello. Thank you for joining me. So Nicola, you may recognise from the Instagram and TikTok accounts Hands With Hallie. That's why she's here today to talk about Hallie and the rest of her family. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We actually got to meet about a month ago at the BAPS Awards. Nicola was a nominee, a very well-deserved nominee for the BAPS Awards. So it's strange, isn't it, getting to meet people in real life who you chat to online, and then you have this one date of the year where you actually come together.
Yeah, it's really strange. And actually, I followed you for a long time, even before I had Hallie or had any involvement really with my own children and autism, because I've worked with autistic children. So I followed you for like absolutely years and years and years. So it is really strange when you actually meet somebody in person.
Yeah. Perfect. So tell everyone, for those who don't follow you already, tell everyone a little bit about you, you and your family, where you live in the UK. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So I am from Nottinghamshire, and I have got three daughters. One is 15, one is 7, and one is 3. I began on the autism journey when Hallie was a baby, and it was quite a hard process in getting the diagnosis and the whole journey. So I decided that I needed to find a community really. So I joined Instagram and definitely found that. So it's been really good to meet people and get support because everyone's amazing.
Yeah. So you said there that journey started when you first had suspicions when Hallie was a baby. So how old was she when you first thought that she was developing a little bit differently?
So I had just this feeling when she was first born.
Mm.
It was just a feeling, and there was nothing really to go off on it, and I just instantly got rid of it because it was like, I don't know why I've just thought that. You know, when you have like an intrusive thought and it's like, yeah, I don't really know why I
Yeah.
thought about that. So I just kind of brushed that off, and that was that. Then at about 12 weeks old, I think it was around the kind of time when they go for their 12-week, you know, when they go and see the GP for, you know, a checkup, because I remember mentioning it at that appointment. And she had a bit of a shake in her hands. And I knew that it was neurological. I could tell it was neurological. And when I would pick her up, her whole body would like tighten. And I used to think in that moment, I think she's going to have a seizure. But then she'd like move again. And I'd think, yeah, she's okay. And it used to like make my heart stop when she used to do it. So from that point, I was like, not sure what's going on here. So I mentioned it at that appointment. And they just said to me that because she was premature, she was 4 weeks early. They said that's, you know, quite common in premature babies. It maybe just is a tremor of some sort and it will disappear with time. And then that was that again. Off on my way I went. And then it was around 10 months that I felt like, yeah, there's 100, I was 100% sure then at 10 months old that there was definitely more to this. And I wasn't going to let it was that moment where I knew I'm not going to let this, you know, I'm not going to walk out an appointment now and let them tell me that everything's okay, because I know that it's not.
Yeah. I think, and you explain this really well on some of your videos that I've seen you do. Sort of one of the reasons that I wanted to chat with you is because that, you know, there's such an age difference between my boys and Hallie. So you're going through these stages a lot more recently than I was or am. And I've watched your videos and seen a lot of reminders of, oh yeah, I remember, you know, like Jude did that or Tommy did that. So if you think back to sort of 10 to 12 months, what were some of the signs that Hallie, I guess, traits that she was displaying or things that she was doing that you know sort of put you on this pathway?
Yeah, so she was one of the first things for me was she was extremely hard to wean. So she wouldn't accept food at all. It would just be kind of spat out of her mouth.
Right.
When I came to try and introduce any kind of texture, that was a complete no-go. It wasn't happening. So Hallie stayed on puree food for a long time because she wouldn't ever accept a texture. She also used to, if I gave her any of the like handheld food items, like a breadstick or something like that, she would always choke all the time. So I remember her dad, when she was being fed, he'd be gone. He's like, I'm not staying in the room, I'm going, because he used to be absolutely terrified every time I fed her because she used to choke all the time. So that was one thing that I knew wasn't, you know, with my other children, they did have some feeding issues, but it wasn't on this level.
Yeah.
And then another thing is that she didn't engage at all. She was pretty much at that point. I would say I really noticed the lack of engagement at about 1. That was when I really noticed that she was, you know, not answering to her name. She was, you know, she wouldn't really play with toys in a typical way. She would just spin things. Anything that she found, she would just spin. She didn't like any electronic toys, anything that made a noise or moved. Apart from her spinners, because I guess they're in her control, aren't they? Whereas with a toy that, you know, starts, you know, makes a noise, she was absolutely terrified. Extremely sensory to things, lights and sounds. She'd get really upset. And then she started stimming from about, as she was delayed in all of her milestones. She didn't sit up until she was 18 months old.
Right.
But what I used to do was, at about 10 months, I used to kind of prop her in the corner of the sofa. So she had the support from both sides. And she used to continuously kick her legs. And she would tighten her whole body up, her whole face would tighten up. And she would do that all day. If I let her, she would sit there all day and do that, with the TV on, and that's what she was happy doing. She didn't really need anything else. She was really quite content as well, actually. If she had what she needed, which was sensory TV on, she was really happy and just, quite an easy baby. That all changed. But as a baby, she was, dead chilled out. So, I'm trying to think of anything else really that I noticed. Oh, there was obviously the lack of development in terms of she wasn't pointing, she wasn't obviously speaking, she wasn't hitting any of those milestones that she should hit. And at 1 year old, when the health visitor came round to do her questionnaire, it was a complete fail on all questions. She couldn't do any of the things that a 1 year old should be doing. She wouldn't follow a point. She obviously still wasn't sitting up. So it was just huge delays, really.
I remember just those periods of time where you imagine, like, okay, and I guess for you already had children, so you'd been through the process of what your child could or should be doing by that stage. And it's strange. I remember Jude he was content with TV and music and things like that, and like you said, just could be doing it for hours. But it was all the other things. It was the not interested in toys, not interested in all the things that you imagine another child would be. So I'm guessing you mentioned you had been working with autistic children already. So were you thinking, was that jumping out to you in your mind that she might be autistic from your own experiences?
In the initial first stages, it was just a gut feeling, because I actually knew very little about early signs of autism. I knew what autism might look like in an older child of 7 plus. But in younger children, I really didn't have much of a clue, really. My sister's boy is autistic. He's now 15, and she would make comments to me and say, she's probably autistic. So obviously she, would say things to me that then obviously, and my gut instinct was there. And then I started looking on YouTube and things like that. And as soon as I looked on YouTube, I was like, I think this is what it is. But there was always part of me as well that thought, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not, maybe she'll just, she'll snap out of this and she'll just, everything will come. Because that's what people would say to me. That's what everyone said to me. The health visitors, my friends, people would say that, they all catch up and, they do things in their own time and all kids are different. And, all these kind of comments were said to me all the time. So it made me doubt myself a lot. And it's a hard place to be when your gut instinct is telling you one thing, but everything else on the exterior is going against what your instinct is.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common experience especially for mums. Jude and Tommy's mum had to convince me that Jude was autistic. Not that she really knew lots about autism, but she could see wasn't developing as quickly as the other kids around her in baby groups and stuff like that, or friends' children. And we'd go to see the doctor, and the doctor would say, no, he's a boy, he'll catch up. He's born prematurely, like
Yeah.
Hallie was. And I took away, the doctor's right. Of course the doctor's right. It'll all be fine. I think he'll catch up. That we'll just give it a few months. And so she had to convince me for a while before we got any further. And it is, I can imagine it is very draining when people try to be nice and say, oh, everything will be fine, they'll catch up. But it must be very draining just hearing that. And because you, like you said, you doubt yourself, you doubt what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think, like you say there, people are always trying to be nice. And it's not that anybody wants to intentionally hurt someone's feelings, because I remember when people have said it to me, like, I've had comments about, with speech and things like this, like, oh, well, my boy didn't speak until he was 4, and now he's absolutely fine. And while it's nice to hear those experiences, in that moment, it just, you don't know that. Like, I obviously, Hallie has obviously developed some speech now. Yes, she's still delayed, but in that moment, like, I never knew. I really thought, this is never going to happen. And yeah, that person, as much as they've got lovely intentions and trying to reassure, was trying to reassure me, it kind of, it's a bit of it kind of hurts in the moment.
Definitely. So what's the process then? It's been a long time since Jude was diagnosed, and things have definitely changed. And I know area to area can be different as well. So like you said, around 10 to 12 months, you're becoming quite clear in your own mind that there's something that needs to be looked at. What's the process where, for parents who might be in that same position, what's the first steps? What did you do? How did you start moving towards a diagnosis?
So it was at the 12-month health visitor appointment that I expressed my concerns, and obviously she expressed her concerns for her lack of development, so her delays. So it was kind of a conversation that we had together that was the first point. Up until that point, when she had that 1 year review, I don't think I felt confident to actually approach anybody about it. So I just waited until somebody came and came to see her, really. So I thought that 1-year-old appointment was maybe a good place to start. So yeah, so she came and she said, yeah, there's definitely some, there's some delays here. They was quite concerned because she wasn't sitting up. She was in physio, so she was being looked after in terms of her gross motor. But obviously the delays were across the board. So she then referred us through to like I think it's like a children's service. So it's a place where mums can go to get support with parenting and things like that. So I went along to that place, and the lady, we had like a little one-to-one appointment with her and Hallie. And she said to me straight after that, this isn't the right place for you to, this is not what you need. You need to be referred through to pediatrics. So she then got in touch with the health visiting team again and said she needs a referral. They rejected the referral because of Hallie's age, and she needed a bit more time. But then this lady, bless her, got back onto these health visitors, and she said, no, I'm sorry, this little girl needs to be seen, and we're not, you need to do it. So at that time, I really felt that I couldn't speak up. I didn't feel confident enough at that point. I was, and she did that for me, which I'll be forever grateful for, because she got Hallie the referral through to the paediatrics team, which did come through quite quickly. I know a lot of people go on a long waiting list for that. But in our area, it works a little bit different, that we have we have a process where you get seen by a service called NBS, and I can't remember what it stands for. Neurodiversity something anyway.
There's so many
But
acronyms in being a parent of our children, isn't it? There's so many acronyms. I'm like,
yeah,
what does that mean? I don't
can't
know.
remember that one, but
Yeah.
so they basically look after parents while they're on the pathway. Really, they offer like support, like some kind of groups and training and things like that. But that's a 2-year pathway that you're on that for. But
Right.
luckily,
Okay.
because Hallie was so young, she skipped that whole process and got straight through to the pediatrician. Sorry. So she was seen pretty quick, but like I say, I know in some areas there's this whole process that comes before that, and this is where parents end up having a long time to wait. So we got, like I say, we got seen pretty quick. It was the process after that that then took the long time, because she was seen in that clinic, and the pediatrician, she agreed there was signs of autism there. However, she categorically said to me, she's too young. We can't diagnose her. She's too young at this point, because she was about 18 months old at the time, I think, when she had that appointment, and they wanted to give her more time. So I was like, that's fair enough. I didn't have a great experience with the pediatrician. I felt like everything I said to her, she would come back at me with something else, to say, no, that's normal. This is all children. So I had a difficult experience with that. But yeah, we obviously got there in the end. It just took from 1.5 to just over 3.
18 months, 2 years from someone saying she probably is autistic to actually getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating, because I hear that all the time of people saying a professional has said they're too young. Now, Jude was diagnosed when he was about 20 months, and they agreed it was very young. They said, I think at the time, they made he was like the second youngest child they'd diagnosed in Essex or something, some crazy stat. And we didn't really know that he was potentially too young to be diagnosed, or we were just following the steps that went through. But he got his diagnosis. So it's frustrating now when you hear so many families, even at like 2, 3, and they're saying, no, they're too young, come back in 18 months. It's crazy, because it's such a long wait, and you're kind of in limbo, aren't you, for that time?
It's so difficult, and I've definitely got one of those personalities that I struggle to not have an answer. I need to either know yes or no. I find that really quite difficult.
Yeah.
So it was hard. At the end of it, I was, it was hard, because even when you get the diagnosis, processing that information, even when you knew it anyway, it comes with a whole load of new emotions. But I was so relieved to just have that part out of the way, because it was draining. And Hallie's pediatrician, because at about 2.5, between the age of like 1 and 2.5, Hallie was, I would say she was, she had the classical signs of autism. When she hit 2.5, she began then to start engaging again, and, giving some eye contact and engaging in play and things. So once the pediatrician had seen that didn't then go in our favour, because it was like, well, she's quite sociable, she gives eye contact.
Yeah.
And when Hallie is comfortable with somebody and she knows them very well, she will give them eye contact, she will play with them and engage with them. But if she's in a new environment, or when we're out and about on, walking down the street and someone speaks to her, she turns away, she's not speaking to anybody. But because obviously she does sometimes socialise, and that was documented, it didn't go in our favour, because then she made us wait another year.
It's crazy. And it's just so frustrating because I hear it all the time, and especially with girls as well. You know, people saying they can't be autistic because you know it must be really difficult. So tell me more about Hallie. I mean, she's clearly, from what I see of her online, a huge personality. She definitely has you
Yeah.
on your toes, keeps you busy.
Oh,
So
yes.
tell everyone a bit more about Hallie. So you mentioned there's been some improvement in speech, which I've noticed, which is fantastic in the time that I've been following you. So talk a little about that and how our communication has improved.
Yeah, so Hallie didn't have any words until she was 2.5.
Mm,
And between the ages of 2.5 and 3, it was just single words that she would say. And then she might not say them again for ages. So it was, just little bits now and again. She would say numbers. That was something she would always say. So she could count, she could label things. So, like colours, she was
right.
really good at, but her actual speech until after 3.5, no, about 3, sorry, yeah. There wasn't really any, back and forth kind of. There was
Mhm.
none of that going on. But yeah, so she was we was quite lucky, even though she didn't have a diagnosis. We did get early intervention in form of speech therapy. So Hallie was under speech therapy from just before she turned 2. Um, and so that was really helpful because although Hallie wouldn't engage with a speech therapist, they would walk into my house. And as soon as they did, Hallie would just scream and throw things at me or them or the TV or whatever until that person left. Um, but what they ended up doing was they came round when Hallie was at nursery and they would teach me. So I
Right.
learned so much from those speech therapists that then I applied with Hallie. And I spent a lot of time, trying to implement those strategies and things that they had taught me with Hallie. And we learned like Makaton she loved, singing. So Hallie learns a lot by singing. That was one of the keys for Hallie, was anything with a tone or a little tune she would do. So if it was, put your shoes on, we sing put your shoes on instead. So we rarely spoke in actual speech. It was all singing all the time.
Mm,
And that seemed to really help Hallie to learn how to speak. It's funny because she would say things, the things that she'd picked up from different people, she would speak in the way that they'd said them. So we'd know if she'd learned something from me or if she'd learned something from dad or her sisters,
yeah.
because it would sound as them. But yeah, she's come a long way from having, from 2.5 and having no speech at all, to now at nearly 4. She is now, and yeah, she's you can have a conversation with her now. She can't tell you things like how her day's been,
Yeah.
or it's still very basic, um, but it's still amazing. It's still
Mm.
amazing from where we were. So I just feel incredibly, you know, incredibly thankful that we had that help, really, because without it, I don't obviously know where we'd be now. So
Yeah, like I said, I've noticed in the last year or so of following you and seeing the real progression, especially recently. It seems like she's really talking a lot more with you, like you said, in conversation wise.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And the thing is, it's really funny because before she learned to speak, like I say, she was quite a content happy, didn't need for much. And now it is the complete opposite. Like, does she voice what she needs? She really, really does. Like, if she's not doing something, it is a
Mm,
categoric. She will scream no at me.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw one the other day that I put on with the chicken nuggets. She
Yes.
she just
Yeah.
kept going nuggets, like, instantly, until I gave her chicken nuggets. She wasn't going to stop screaming that at me.
Mm,
She has got a very demanding and persistent personality that I am never going to win at. It is very difficult. me and her dad was looking at the EHCP the other day, and there was a question on there like, how do you meet Hallie's needs at home? And I said, should I just write, we just follow exactly what she tells us to do, and then it's all fine. But yeah, no, she's a character, that's for sure. But yeah, her speech, as she's developed that speech, she's definitely learned how to, demand with it.
Chicken nuggets are obviously a huge favourite in many households in our little community.
Yeah.
You said earlier about her having problems with food and textures and stuff. As the food side, I mean, she's eating chicken nuggets, which is clearly, a lot better than a couple of years ago. So is it still quite a sensory thing with food with her?
So Hallie's actually probably done a whole 360 on food, really. I think the sensory side of things we found out was actually to do with the chewing. So she wasn't able to chew very well, which meant she was choking a lot. She doesn't know how much food to put in her mouth, and she often bites her lips and things like that because she's not feeling things the same as other people. So once we had some support from, we got some support from OT for that, and speech therapy helped a little bit as well. Once we had a bit of support with that, and she got, she still has moments, she still bites herself and things like that and overstuffs, but she's much better than she was. And she now eats, she's very much a sensory seeker with food. So she likes spices, she likes different textures, she eats all day, like constant. Like, I can't stop her from eating. She sits there on the sofa and she will demand a picky plate all day. So picky plate. And I have to just fill it up with different textures and different foods because she just wants to sit there and eat. So yeah, she's completely opposite now to what she was in that first couple of years.
And you think a lot of that's come from the OT? Is there anything in particular that they did that helped her become more used to these sorts of foods? And
so it was really just obviously supervising when eating and things like that, obviously modeling as well to her. We did quite a lot of that. Different things like chew buddies and all the different, because there's different ones that we had with different textures, so that was quite helpful as well. And then we did things like using, like, she won't always have them, but we had a stage where she would like ice poles and things like that to help with the sensory seeking, but it's not obviously, as much food as well. So yeah, they gave us a few tips. It wasn't a lot, just because we had to pay for a private report for that, because obviously you don't get any sensory OT on the NHS. I think that's the same across the whole country, isn't it? With sensory needs. I don't know if some people might qualify, but I know in my area it's a massive no.
Yeah, I think we have had some sensory support over the years, but a long time ago when things were a little bit easier, shall we say, about accessing support and having different.
It's one thing that really in my opinion, it's one thing that is really needed, is sensory support. And I don't know if I see that more because a lot of Hallie's needs are sensory based, but like at the moment I haven't been able to bath Hallie for about a month. I cannot get her in the bath. So at the minute we're just sponge washing, using sprays on her hair and just trying to, wet her hair and give it a little, wet wash kind of thing. And I would, it would be so beneficial to have some support from an OT if it was available on the NHS. But yeah, I rang and they said, sorry, no.
And before that point, she was happily bathing, or has it always been a struggle and just got harder?
She tends to go through stages. So she'll be very much sensory seeking, love water, splashing, absolutely fine in the water. And then she will do the exact opposite and be scared of the water. This mainly started because she felt a piece of hair brush onto her arm, and she obviously overreacted, thinking it was more than what it was.
Yeah.
And then she obviously, so scared, tensed up, tried to get out the bath, and yeah, we've not been able to get her back in since. So I'm just working on some strategies at the minute with her in terms of trying to get her to wash her hands in a bowl, wash some toys and things like that, which is not going great at the minute, but just trying.
Yeah. It's so hard when, like you said, that they can just go through phases and things change. And I guess in a way it's good that you even know what it might have been, because you could easily have missed that, the hair going on her arm and the way she reacted. And, so at least you've got an idea of what triggered it, but it doesn't make it any easier to work through. Now, obviously your account is called Happy Hands with Hallie. I'm guessing it's because she has very happy hands. I've seen a lot of videos of her happily flapping and stimming and getting lots of stimulation from her hand movements. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Is that something that she's always enjoyed?
Yeah, so hands are, from a few months old, Hallie would do things like she would just put her hands in front of her face and just watch them, which is typical for babies when they find their hands, they watch them and they explore that. But Hallie would do that all the time. She was absolutely obsessed with her hands. And as she got older, that just got more and more and more. So then it would turn into holding very small objects, like she'd have little Tivas or whatever, and she'd just hold them up and follow them and things like that. And then it was when she stood up, really, that the flapping started. As soon as she got on her feet and stopped the legs, because she would continuously kick the legs back and forth like this. That's when the hands started. But it's even in the wrists, like she's always, and she's always been like it.
Yeah.
And I originally thought that she might have something called complex motor stereotypies. And still looking at the information now, I still would be quite confident that she has that as well. Because you can get complex motor stereotypies with and without autism. But she definitely has a lot of movement all the time. So that's constant.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's lovely in the videos. You can see how happy she is. And when she's getting even happier, her hands go even more. And I know that from my boys, that flapping is a big part of their life too. Are there any sensory activities that really work for Hallie that she really enjoys, or that really help her regulate?
So she loves drawing. That's something that she's really started to engage a lot in. So she will just, she'll have one hand doing it's not really, just scribbling, but she'll have one hand just scribbling and the other hand will be going. So it's just such a sensory activity for her. And I think it's more predictable than a lot of things. So Hallie can be, it's everything with Hallie is a love-hate thing. So whereas she's liked sand, then she hates it. You can't ever judge what she's going to enjoy. It's like her regulation is dependent on that day. And then what she'll engage in is dependent on how she's feeling. So some days she'll love messy play. Other days it's an absolute no-go. So you just have to judge how she is that day, or try something. And if obviously she doesn't want to do it, you leave it. But she does at times, she absolutely loves messy play and getting her hands in and dirty. We set up quite a lot of sensory activities for her when she's in those places. So yeah, she's very sensory seeking, but then can shift to the complete opposite. I remember I gave her some Play-Doh once, and 1 minute she's happily playing with this Play-Doh. The next minute with Hallie, it's the eyebrows that drop and she goes like this, and then it's just it gets launched across the room, and then she's in full-blown meltdown. So yeah, it's very hit and miss with Hallie. I think she's definitely got like a combination type of sensory processing disorder, because some children can be one or mainly one or the other, dip in and out, but Hallie can literally, she's like this all the time. So Yeah, it can be hard work.
Yeah, I think it can be like I feel like I'm at a stage now with my boys where they're quite predictable, and that in itself can be sometimes challenging, as in you want to try and introduce new things, or you want to try and do more. And but the good thing is I can, their behaviors I can quite predict. I know, okay, they are going to like this, or if I do this they would definitely like it. Whereas that sort of extreme you've described, like she loves sand, she hates sand, uh that's quite difficult on a daily basis, isn't it? Because if you think you want to take her to the beach because she loves sand, and then today she doesn't love sand and you're at the beach and you're stuck.
Yeah,
um
yeah, we've booked a holiday, and I just know she's not even going to go in the water at the minute as it stands. I don't even think she's going to go in the water,
yeah.
but we'll cross that when it comes. Everything could change by then, but yeah, because she used to absolutely love water, and it was like, again, for sensory seeking, it was one of her favorite things to do. And yeah, at the minute it's
Mm.
something's obviously triggered a trauma response from a sensory system, and
Yeah.
it's we're not going in. So um yeah, it's hard.
When Hallie's in that moment, when she's having a hard time, or she's having a meltdown, what generally works for you to help her calm down and be more regulated? Is there anything that's working at the moment?
So for Halle, it's either leave her or give her a hug. And
Right.
so usually, if because she'll lay in the floor, usually that's what she'll do. She'll just lay, arms up, and it'll just be laying in the floor, and she'll roll around on the floor. And if I just kind of approach her, but not too close, like I don't want to get in her space too much, and I'll just say, "Do you need a hug?" And that's normally something I just say to her: "Do you need a hug?" And sometimes I'll get kind of a bit of a nod, or she'll put her arms towards me, or I'll get some kind of communication, gesture, something that she probably won't speak to me, but I can kind of get from her body language what she wants me to do. And then if she continues to spin or make noises, I know I just need to kind of step back and leave her for a minute. So I just tend to just make sure that she's in a safe place, really, and there's nothing that she can bump her head on, and just let her have that moment, really, and then maybe try again. And usually she'll always let me give her a hug when she's ready, on her
Yeah.
terms. Everything's on her terms. And when she's ready, she'll let me have a hug. And a hug for Halle is one of the most, it really helps her, like just a big hug, hold her, put like a little tiny bit of pressure on, not too much, so it's a nice squeeze. And she absolutely loves that. And she likes her arm to be stroked or her face to be stroked. She loves things like that. So um, that tends to get her out, but it can be, sometimes it can be a long time before she'll let me do that. So I've just got to make sure she's safe, really.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? I remember, when the boys were sort of Hallie's age or a little bit older and struggling, and naturally what you want to do is go give them a hug and make everything okay. As a parent, you want to get in there, and you start to learn that
Yeah.
sometimes actually giving them space, like you said, is the best thing. Even though you really want to comfort them and help them, sometimes it is just all you can do is put them in a safe environment and give them some space and give them time to calm down. And then, yeah, maybe when things are better, then you can, have a bit of pressure, a bit of comfort. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely works. That definitely works for Halle. And she's got, we've got all sorts at home. Like we've turned her bedroom into like a sensory room. The bedroom that she won't sleep in. Doesn't sleep in there. It's now just a sensory room. But all my other kids use it as well. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of turned into a sensory room now. But she's got access to that. She's obviously iPads, I think they are, they're brilliant because
Mm.
they just offer some, like, I think for Hanny, like just something visual just helps to calm her down. So it can be sometimes that I'll offer her, something different. And that sometimes that might sometimes help as well, because sometimes with Hallie, what I'll find is if like high chair, being in, because she's still in a high chair because she can't quite sit stable. But food is a huge trigger for Hallie. If I'm not getting things right and she can't tell me what she wants, then that can always trigger a really bad mood and a lot of screaming. So often what I'll do at that point is I just kind of take her out into a different room, and sometimes we'll go and sit in her sensory room and just just come out of the situation completely and then go back to it, once she's regulated. Because once you're in that moment and things have got too much, as a parent as well, I think it's hard. It's hard not to get frustrated as well. So that's often what we do, is I kind of regulate with her, and we'll just go, right, let's just go in the bedroom and then we'll come and get food in a minute. And again, sometimes that works. Other times it's a categoric no, that's not happening. She'll continue to scream. But, on those days when it does work, it's good. So
yeah, I think that, and that's a really honest thing that you just said about, it's hard for us not to get frustrated too, because we adore our kids, we want them to be happy. All parents get frustrated, and when your child is struggling and angry or crying or upset, and you can't figure out what it is, and it's happened, they haven't eaten their food again, there's all different things that go on throughout the day. It's only natural that we get frustrated too. And I think often as parents, when our kids have additional needs, whether they're autistic or something else, we feel like we're not allowed to feel like that. It's because our kids are struggling, so we can't feel that we're frustrated or angry or tired, or and that happens to us too.
Definitely, yeah. It's a bit easier now that Hallie has a way, like she can't always tell me what she wants, but then she can sometimes too. And we also have some cards and things that she can use. So it has got a lot easier. But, there are days where she doesn't know the name of what she's obviously seen something or wants something, but she doesn't know the name of what it is that she's asking for. And she will just be like pointing at cupboards, and I will be, opening a cupboard. Would you like this? No. And then I'll be opening up this, and I could be stood there for half an hour with 100, 200 different food items that I presented to her, and none of them. And I'm like, I don't know what she wants. I don't know what she wants. And I can feel myself starting to get like, I need to come out of this situation in a minute, because I can feel myself bubbling, like, I don't know what she wants. And that's what I'll often do. I'll go out the room like, don't know what she wants. Don't know what she wants. And I have to just laugh about it, because if I don't laugh, I'll cry.
Yeah.
And but like I say, I feel for people, who have got children who are non-verbal, because I can imagine this is it could be an everyday occurrence. Whereas obviously Hattie does have some ability to speak now, but I remember these days so well. And they do still happen.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that Hallie's not sleeping in her bed, so I'm guessing sleep is a bit of an issue. Does that mean she's sleeping?
Hallie won't step foot in her bedroom.
Right. Okay. And again, this is a new thing.
Yeah, she will go in there for when it's a sensory room. Like, she'll go in there, no problem, but she won't sleep in there. She will not go to sleep in there at all. It's a
Has she ever slept
no.
in there?
You could,
Yeah.
So from being, well, I think I moved her out when she was 1, which is probably quite late for you to move a baby out. Normally people do that way before. But because I knew she was my last baby, I kind of just held on to her a bit longer. I thought, she can stay with me a bit longer. But then at 1 year old, or it might have been about a bit before, she went into her own room, no problem. And she was absolutely fine. And from about the age of 1 to 2.5, no issues with sleep whatsoever. No issues at all. It was brilliant. And at 2.5, that's when the issues began. She doesn't sleep, late nights, wakes in the night, doesn't like the bedroom. She's got some fear of being in that room on her own as well. So yeah, she just has she's got like a bed on the floor because she doesn't like sleeping high up either.
Mm.
So particular. So yeah, she sleeps on a mattress on the floor in my bedroom. And it's just easier that way because if I do move her, because I have tried it where I thought, right, let her fall to sleep in my room, and then I'll move her into her room, and then that'll be fine. So when I've done that, what happens is she'll wake up screaming. And because it's taken me, I don't know, say 30 seconds to get from my bed to her bedroom, in that time, she's wide awake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if she's next to my bed, I can literally, I've got ears, and I'm like, as soon as I hear a little movement, I like get the blanket, dummy, or whatever it is, just to comfort her before she's even woke up. So it just means that we get more sleep.
Mm.
And it, it might not be that it's the right way or the traditional way to do it, but it works for us and we get sleep. And that's the most important thing, I think, isn't it? Sleep. We need sleep.
I 100% agree. I just did an interview with some sleep consultants, Hunrosa sleep consultants. You have to watch that episode because there's lots of good advice on there. But we were talking about co-sleeping, and I used to sleep with Jude until he was about 10, 11. And they admit it's very common. It's often basically we all wake up in the night, but some of us go back to sleep a lot easier than others. And the reason, like you said, you're next to Hallie in that moment. You've got to her quickly enough to help her get back to sleep. And that was the same with Jude. I'd be next to him. If he woke up, I'd lay him back down again. If I was in the next room and waited for him to make a noise so that I woke up, he'd be wide awake and up for 4 hours. So it's like the only way we got through was to do that. But hopefully it doesn't last forever. It didn't last forever for us. So hopefully you'll get there soon.
Hope so. It will be nice for her to, get some proper sleep, and me not having late nights. And she switches. She goes, when she started at the preschool, she went from being 1 o'clock in the morning kind of girl to a falling to sleep at tea time and then back up at 1 o'clock. So it's switched as time's gone on, but she just clearly doesn't need a lot of sleep, and that's that.
Yeah. And it is so hard, and it's hard on us as parents to function and do everything that we need to do, whether that's, work, looking after our kids, all those other things. But then it's very hard for our kids as well because they're not in the best state to. I know for Tommy and Jude, when they get the best amount of sleep, they are the best at school and they're the best, more regulated during the day. And then when they're having good days at school and they have good sleep, it sort of goes hand in hand with, together. It's a tricky thing to get right, but when you do, it really does make a difference.
Yeah. I think when Hallie goes into reception and she gets a better routine at school and hopefully more support, that's what we're hoping for, to get her some more support, then that might mean that she's better, because at the moment she is getting so exhausted from the school environment that then as soon as she gets home, she drops to sleep because she's overstimulated and she's overwhelmed from that day. So then she falls to sleep at a time that, it's tea time or it's before tea time even, and you then can't wake her up. She's completely, fast asleep. So I'm hoping, we can get a better, more support, which means she's better regulated at school, which means she's not coming home like that anymore, which will then obviously have the knock-on effect at night time as well. But, obviously time will tell with that one, how we're going to get on with that.
So talking about that support is quite a hot topic at the moment in our autism community online, EHCPs.
Yeah.
It's something that I, for years, have had loads of messages about, how to get them. The school won't give us one. What happens when they're not, meeting needs, etc., etc. There's such a minefield, which hopefully we're going to start to change with all the support we're getting online about it. But I know you're at that you're at that stage of Hallie going into school now and applying for EHCPs. So do you want to just tell a little bit about your experience so far and why it's so important to get that right?
Yeah, so I think my experiences has been slightly different to a lot of other people's, just because I have done a parent request for my EHCP. So a lot of the time it can be that parents are, when their child's in those nursery years, they are, encouraged, or, it's recommended that you have an EHCP. And in Nottinghamshire, in my area, it runs on a system called graduated response, which is there's a few areas that run like this, but there's not that many. And it basically means that you have to go through 3 tiers of support before an EHCP is recommended. The tiers are dictated and decided by the SENCO. So if you don't agree with this support that your SENCO's, put in place, if you think actually there needs to be more, it's only the SENCO that's made that decision. So for me, as much as I have a really good relationship with Hallie's SENCO, and she's done her best for her, and it's technically the money that she's trying to get for Hallie that's causing the issue anyway. It's not that she doesn't want it. But because obviously school are not providing that level of support for Hallie, I've had no choice for me but to go for an EHCP, because I feel that the support's not right and she needs more.
I mean, that sounds ridiculous that Hallie would have an autism diagnosis as early as she has and have all the different professionals involved that you've had over the years and her not start school with an EHCP. It just doesn't make any sense that because you can have an EHCP without an autism diagnosis. You can have, and that's a sort of common myth that gets bandied about, is that, oh, you've not got a diagnosis yet. When you get a diagnosis, then maybe you'll get an EHCP. But she's clearly, it's very clear what her support needs are and what she's going to need for her development. And I think we assume that it would just be put in place, but like you said, she's due to start school in September, right? And it's still not there.
Yeah, because Nottinghamshire, with an EHCP in Nottinghamshire, doesn't come with any money. So we literally run completely different to the rest of the country. And from what I can gather, is Nottinghamshire is an area that is, in the good book because we don't spend as much money. So that's obviously why this system is so tricky to navigate, because it's like you have to go through stages before then you can go, I want an EHCP. So Hallie could be, what they said to me was Hallie could be in mainstream school and she'll have extra funding because we'll apply for it. So you don't need an EHCP, you don't need one. So I'm like, all right, okay then. So at first I just went with that and was like, yeah, okay then. And when she first started in September, she was getting quite a lot of extra support. That was all in place for her. And then at Christmas, that support was then taken away because they had a new intake of children. They didn't have enough staff, and then they couldn't provide that level of support. So that was when I was like, well, I don't want to go through this, this graduated system. I know that she needs the support, so I'm going to just go for the HCP. But I think parents are made to, follow this kind of pathway before it gets to there. So I know children in Nottinghamshire area that are kids that I would say have got higher needs than Hallie with no EHCP.
It's crazy. And for those of you, so not everyone will know, an EHCP that we're talking about is an educational health care plan. And basically it's a legal document that schools have to follow, or which allows them to get funding, possibly not in Nottinghamshire because on a slightly different system, but to get funding to provide the support that your child needs. And it's a legal document that they then have to follow. And then the parent knows what is being put in place, the school knows what needs to be put in place, and you can refer back to that document throughout to, like in your situation, the support was put in place and it's been taken away. Well, if you have an EHCP, what should happen is it's a legal document, and you can say, well, it's been agreed here in black and white that this is what she gets, this is what she needs. So yeah, it's something that just isn't happening all around the country, and we've been really fortunate that we've always had it. We're in a great school. We were in that school before there were such a thing as EHCPs, but I know that it's just failing so many people at the moment.
Yeah, and obviously Hallie's EHCP it's hard for me to really make a comment on really the EHC process itself, because actually the process for the EHCP has been okay.
Yeah.
Because I did the parent request, it got accepted, which was brilliant. And then we've had professionals go into school, and we've had, I've had to write some things up, and that's been fair. Don't get me wrong, it's tiring and mentally draining, but I've been able to do that. But obviously, I think next month is when it will go to panel, and they will decide if to grant one or not. So I think, that will be the interesting time really to find out, are they going to reject it, or are they going to allow it to go through? I know for a lot of parents, again, I'll speak for Nottinghamshire because I know a lot about Nottinghamshire. So many of them are rejected, and parents have to appeal them, and there's so many parents that are having to do that.
Yeah.
And then we have a lack of educational psychologists as well, so they're running quite far behind too. So we definitely need some changes, I think, in our area.
Yeah, it feels like everything at the moment for parents is automatically rejected, and then it's just a way of cutting out people who aren't going to fight and who aren't going to keep pushing, and that seems to be an automatic rejection, and then a certain percentage will carry on fighting, and then we'll deal with them when they do. And hopefully we start to make a change. Let's talk about something more positive and talk about you and starting Happy Hands with Hallie. I think you said at the very beginning you was looking for community, and that's why you started sharing. So tell us a little bit about that. How long have you been sharing stories online now?
So it's not been very long, really. I think it's been about a year and a half, maybe, that I set the Instagram up first.
Yeah,
and that's been about a year and a half that I set that up. All I wanted to do was I knew that I've been through so much with Hallie's diagnosis, and a lot of the signs and things that we saw, that when I was looking for support and for somebody to help, I could never really find a lot on younger children. It was quite hard to find that information. And I've found with professionals and going into these rooms with professionals, it's so good to know things and to have knowledge. So that's what I wanted to do. Even if it was one person, I just wanted to help someone else if they was in the same situation as me, to feel like they're not alone, and actually there is something that is, there is an can't say that word, explanation, I can't say for it. And I wanted to just find a community, find support, because I was in a really bad place of just feeling alone. And so I turned to social media, and it's been amazing. I don't know how I would be, what I'd be like without social media now, and the community. I've got friends on there that I see all the time. So there's like Daniela on Rocco, the Hydro Warriors account. And then I've got amazing Avery Bay as well. And I see these two like all the time. Like I would consider them like best friends now. And they were just from, coming online, coming on Instagram and chatting and things like that. And it's turned into a really nice friendship. Our kids get along really well. And it's just lovely.
Yeah. It's so, social media gets a bad rap, right? From and there are some negative things on social media. We all know that, but it does so much good. For me, it's been exactly the same. It's given me a community. It's given me almost like a purpose. It's given me friends that I never would have met, people that I never would have got to know, and people who just get it, who understand, understand what life's like, the ups and downs, and also have either been there before you and have advice, or you're the one who can give your advice to someone else and help them. So it's really good. And like I said in the beginning, that I can see, what an amazing job you're doing on Instagram, and all by the number of followers you've got, the way people react to all your videos. And I think you've done exactly that. You've given that very early stages and explaining it really well. And I think for people who, have young children who are going through those stages, I think I get a lot of messages from people at that stage who are like, it's lovely to see down the line and see the positives and see the, how happy the boys are. But I never started at that age and had that sort of document the diagnosis and all of those things. So I think it's really good that people get to see that through your account and all the fun things that Hallie gets up to.
For me as well, I think that it's like an expression, like as a parent, and to be able to have somewhere that you can, you've got people to speak to, and you've got a way, because I quite like poetry and things like that. So I do write, and I like making videos as well. And so I absolutely love the creative element of making videos and putting my thoughts and feelings down. And yeah, I absolutely love doing that, and finding videos, making videos, that really, show, so we can have acceptance, really. And that's what my, something that I've always set out to do is to, get children and adults more acceptance and more understanding, because we have it tough sometimes. Like I can, go out and, the sort of looks that you get if your child's having a meltdown or if they're not cooperating. And, people make an assumption quite quickly and don't think more into it.
Yeah.
So that's something I've always wanted to do, is to make people see that actually there might be more, to what we've been thinking. So
yeah, I think it's so important. I think it's definitely improving because of social media. People are exposed to things that they wouldn't usually see. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously there's still a long way to go, but I think we're slowly getting there. You said obviously this account gives you, it sort of fulfills a bit of creativity for you. You do some poetry. Tell us a little bit more about you, Nicola, before we wrap up. So you're a mum of 3, so you're busy looking after 3 different girls. What else is life like for you at home?
Well, before I've not long left my employment. So at the minute, I'm kind of just being a mom and enjoying being with the children and doing things that I wouldn't have had time for before. And I'm absolutely loving every moment of it. Just to be present for my children it's such an important thing for me. So my actual job is I work as a counsellor for children. So I've worked with children and given my time to children for so many years. And I just knew that I had to, step back and give that time to my children, that they needed that. So, so that's what I did. But I absolutely, my main thing is helping other people. So when I was growing up, my mum had MS, and she had that from when I was, a baby. She was off her feet by the time I was a toddler.
Oh, wow.
So I looked after her growing up. And with my brother and sister and my dad, we all looked after her, and she was severely disabled. And so when I got older, and, was looking at, what do I want to do? I knew instantly that I wanted to be in a job that was helping other people, because that's all I've ever done is help people. So that's why I then went to train as a children's counsellor, and absolutely love my job. So yeah, it's been hard leaving, because I absolutely loved all my kids, and it's such a rewarding job. But I knew at the same time that I had to take that step back, because my kids need me, and I need to be present for them, and able to meet their needs and be the mum that they need me to be. So at this moment, I'm just enjoying being a mum and all that comes with that for this moment. And then I might go back into some more things later on, but for now it's just being at home.
Well, it sounds like what you're doing on social media is filling that void a little bit of being able to help people. Naturally, that's something you've always done, like you said, from a young child to your career. So it's great that you're able to do that with social media too. And I'm sure there's many families you talk to and give advice to. So that's brilliant. Just before we wrap up, where should everyone find you? We've spoken a lot about your Instagram account, but are there anywhere else they can find you?
So I do have a Facebook page, which is the same as the Instagram. So it's just Happy Hands with _Hallie. Mm-hmm. And then I've also got TikTok and YouTube, which is the same name, Happy Hands with _Hallie. And my plan is to start uploading a bit more onto YouTube and doing some sort of educational videos and content on, some of those earlier signs, things that I've done to help Hallie with her speech, because like I say, I learned a lot of that myself. I've read books. I read a lot of books, and I felt like, I could walk into a speech therapist clinic and I could give speech therapy, because I'd literally read that much on it. And the same with sensory as well. I'm one of those people that I'm not happy knowing just a little bit. I've got to know everything. So I have got a brain now that is completely full of, knowledge and things on how I've supported Hallie. And I'd love to I think YouTube's really good for that, because I can actually, speak about it more.
Yeah.
And help people in that way. So yeah, definitely on the YouTube. There's not much on there at the moment, but there, that's my next plan really, is to get going on there and doing a bit more on there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think it'd be a really good resource for families, and like you said, YouTube is a great place for that. I will make sure all the links are in the show notes, so if you want to follow Nicola and learn more about Hallie and all the things that her and her family do, then definitely make sure you give them a follow. Just before we go, final question: what's one thing that you'd like the world to know about autism?
Probably that it's not always what you think. Those, what we see on the TV and what we automatically assume when someone says the word autism, it's to know that there may be a lot more to it. And, it's not this, textbook version of autism. Everybody's different and everyone's their own person. And yeah, it comes in so many, different variations, and especially girls as well. I've got, obviously with Hallie, she doesn't have all those, classical signs that you might see. So it's, for me, it's, there's definitely more to it. So don't always think that autism is a specific thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and it reminds me of a quote. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, and it's because the spectrum is so wide. And I see that with my boys, how different it can be. So yeah, really important reminder. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Nicola. It's been a pleasure getting to know you more, getting to learn more about Hallie, and I'm sure everyone's going to love what we've spoken about today. So thank you. Quick one before you go. I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, subscribe to the podcast, which will make sure you don't miss any future episodes, but will also help other people find the podcast too. In the show notes, you'll find links for the best places to find this week's guest and where you can connect with me. I'd love to hear what you thought of the episode, so tag me or DM me in all the usual places. Hope you enjoyed this week's story about autism.